by default, we have been working together as staff in from both agencies on a number of these issues, but if we explore their interest and then we mutually agree on our designated individuals to work together with our city colleagues to report back to both bodies in a period of time, hopefully not a full year, as our schedules drive us crazy with meetings with others and with ourselves, but to potentially do that. So I would certainly turn to you, Mr. Dito, to work with the mayor, and we can kind of work ourselves through these, and having members of the Common Council and the school board raise issues of common concern that they would like for us as staff to address.
Okay, good. It sounds like something we could work out, I suppose. Do you want to start this year then, Stan, with the STEM programming district? And
Sure. Well, one of the things I will first of all, I believe we have Julie here. I call upon the one staff member. Okay. But to update on what progress we're making on STEM and the partnerships that are that we can pull on. Why don't I pull to move on to GoEDC cooperation. We have certainly, I believe, at least officially appointed, but I think we have at least 2 or 3 city representatives, and I'm present at all GoEDC meetings, and we continue to work mutually on progress that relate to economic development in the community. And I think that one is probably best up and running, and Mark may wish to add to that.
Sure. I think some of the other, both Mr. Mack and I are on the GoEDC board. Mr. Davis provides support to the GoEDC board, but what's great about it is very broad in its base. So in addition to us, there's a lot of other fixtures in terms of institutions, the school district, the city, the county, Voc Tech district, the university. So we have a real broad base of support with Greater Oshkosh EDC. I think some of the issues that are coming up is how do we work collaboratively to market? And I know the mayor has a lot to talk about this. That's been something of particular interest to him, and I appreciate that Mr. Mack has been sending representatives from the school district, because it's marketing our quality of life, and that's not just an external marketing. It's also as businesses attract people, as Oshkosh Corp will be attracting people as they pick up, we want to attract people selfishly to the city and alternately selfishly to the school district because of the mutual value it provides. But the mayor's been working on a quality of life
committee. Julie Mosier's been there. Kim Brown has been there. And we're making progress. We've got people from EAA involved, Technical College University, and Alan's been there. So we're making progress. I think we've identified some of the problem areas, and one of the biggest enemies is us. And we're trying to really connect all. Everyone's doing something, and we're trying to connect the dots and bring it all together as one cohesive. I refer to Oshkosh as like a car. It's got its features and benefits and bells and whistles, and let's package it and start to market it as one entity. So,
and I know that Board Member Steve Eliason has been really working hard on the promotion of a combined public relations communication piece, including video and the like, that I think he shared a hotline key to examples of those being done in other communities.
Yeah, I would just echo what's been said, and I'll try to be very brief. Picking up on Mayor Cummings' points, I'm struck in my career as an advertising photographer, my career as a youth program director, the quality of life we have here, how we can attract people. In fact, our former board president, Dr. Ian House, came here from Mercury, could have taken a job in Austria, could have lived in Oshkosh. He chose Oshkosh, right? They just left for New Zealand for a number of reasons, but I think of, he would say, the fact that you can live on a lake here, which I could never do in Austria. I can't live on the ocean in New Zealand, but here you can have a fantastic quality of life, work internationally, come home and go windsurfing, and that was my draw when I moved to Oshkosh as well. And I think we've really got something that nobody else has. the sort of the next step in that, in my mind, is how do we keep top-level people, right? Because the water's great, and so much is so good about our community, but are we hitting on at the highest level, kind of across the board, right? And we've made great strides, but that's sort of the bottom line, as I see it. I know of 3 people sort of around our program in the last 2 years, let's say, that have high-level people who've left Oshkosh for Sheboygan or Appleton or New Zealand, because somehow we couldn't quite keep them in the long haul. And that's sort of our challenge, I think.
I think we've identified that we haven't told our story to anyone.
Yeah.
That's the problem. We all kind of know about this lake. Nobody else does.
And to your point even, Steve, I sit on the Convention Visitors Bureau Board as a council rep, and they talked about it today because they've hired Candiel to redo the marketing, and with all the events that we have in the city and the community, how can we maybe attract some of them people to stay here when they come from outside for a conference or for a convention or whatever it might be, because of the assets and the values that we have in the Oshkosh area. So they're even looking at marketing more of than just have your event here in Oshkosh.
Fantastic.
So there's a lot of behind the scenes, as you mentioned, and that. So
And I would certainly encourage that Julie and Kim have both been working on the connection with the city, with the Convention Visitors Bureau and the Mayor's Initiative, that certainly would be a continued match that we will continue to match and contribute to in our efforts to be partners with communicating all aspects of the city of Oshkosh.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
The mayor and I had an opportunity to meet with the gentleman that Melissa Cohn introduced us to, who is sort of
David, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. He works, he's a former school teacher, as it turns out, but his second career, he has essentially becomes a concierge of sorts. Unlike a realtor who's just showing the housing, he is showing people the community and to meet their needs. He works out of Neenah, but we spoke with him about the possibility of putting that type of package together for Oshkosh. And his basic model is he works for that person. And if they say they want to live in a certain area, he will focus them on that area. But he really tries to get to the core of what their interests are and then tries to match that up. That may or may not work with the Oshkosh School District or the City of Oshkosh, but if it does, he'll make sure they know about it. So if they happen to mention in passing that they like windsurfing, we're going to make sure they meet Steve. If they like sheep, then they're going to go to New Zealand and we lose them. That's just the way it is. But we have to know what our strengths are, and we do have. We have a strong school district. We have, a parks system. We've got so many quality of life assets that we just have not done an effective enough job, and that's what Steve preaches. We just haven't enough effective job of selling those items and putting them all together in a package that we can all work on. And I really think that's the core of the
Dave
mayor's
spoke
initiative.
to our group a couple months ago, and he will contract with Kimberly Clark or Bemis when they're bringing in high-level executives, and he's talking to somebody from New York the next couple of days, but tries to find out what they and their family like based on their age group, that type of thing. Spends the whole 2 days and 2 or 3 days with them, and as Mark said, he's not selling real estate, he's really selling the communities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with that, I would suggest we might want to move on. Julie had stepped out of the room, but Julie is really leading our effort with STEM, and Julie may want to step to the table and comment about the partnerships both with Oshkosh Truck and with a recent grant from a wonderful business partner in the community, Lowe's, who contributed again to our ability to respond. So I'll turn this over to Julie.
I think we're all well aware that in the Oshkosh area, economic development, we've been focusing on IT, aviation, and manufacturing. Those have been areas that we've identified that are our key economic areas and that we want to strengthen the workforce. Well, it just so happens that all those areas fall under STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So as a school district, we've been really looking at how do we firm up our pathways and how do we strengthen those areas and course offerings and preparing our students to be college, career, and community ready. And our community, once again, has targeted IT, aviation, and manufacturing. So what are we doing as a school district? Well, starting with the little ones, we are currently working with Jacob Shapiro Brain-Based Laboratory School, and we are well on our way of really converting that over to a K-5 STEM school, keeping the brain-based pieces intact, but really looking at it from a STEM area. And so in grades 2 through 5 this year, we have been working on using the next generation science standards, science practices, and engineering practices right in the classroom to get students engaged in STEM at an early age. And so that's a start there. And then as a school district, we are working towards that district-wide. That's going to take a little bit to get there, but we're working there. At the middle school areas, it's a little known secret, but this is where we have to get better at telling our story. But we have Project Lead the Way curriculum in the middle school, and Project Lead the Way is a nationally recognized engineering curriculum, and that's adopted into our technology and engineering courses in grades 7 and grades 8, which then leads into our Project Lead the Way curriculum at the high school level, where we have Principles of Engineering, Introduction to Engineering Design, Computer Integrated Manufacturing, Digital Electronics, all those things that really build engineers. It's a really nice kept secret where students are earning dual credits. Project Lead the Way now has a partnership with the College Board that does AP testing, so students can do college credit, but right now our partnership is with MSOE. So students that are in that and they pass the end of the course assessment receive Milwaukee School of Engineering credit, and so we have a dual credit opportunity there. So that STEM piece, but it goes beyond that. We have partnerships in other areas of our schools where we're doing dual credits. So we have University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, where we're doing CAP. We have all of our upper level science courses are all dual credit with the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. We have a really firm health career pathway where we have dual credits with Fox Valley Technical College with medical terminology, introduction to health careers, and we are offering students certified nursing assistant training one of two ways, because healthcare is actually also come under the science and STEM, and that's also an area of need. I think you may have heard from several of our Oshkosh organizations that they're in dire need of certified nursing assistants and healthcare providers, and so we offer that at school, and also through partnerships with the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm going to get the wrong Rotary organization that we're partnered with that help us do that in the summer. So we have those pieces. Then also, oh, and I forgot about the grant that we talked about at Shapiro. We just received a Lowe's grant so that we can do an innovation makerspace area at Jacob Shapiro, and so we have approximately three-quarters of the funding to make that totally happen for our students. The other best kept secret is that we have an IT career pathway, once again in partnership with Fox Valley Technical College, and also AP and Project Lead the Way components. So, for example, last semester, a group of students at Oshkosh North was in C# computer programming, and it's team taught by Brian Foote and Kevin Backey. Brian Foote's a Fox Valley Technical College instructor, and this semester it's being co-taught once again by Brian Foote and Stephen Seidel at Oshkosh West this semester, but it's C# programming. And we also have we're offering, and hopefully we'll be set to go, but Project Lead the Way computer science and engineering. So there's just so many things that are going on with STEM, but what we're really trying to do is we're trying to be purposeful, intentional, and focused. And we know that as we develop these things and as we go forward with partnerships, that a strong school system can help drive economic development, but economic development can help drive a strong school system. And so making sure that we're really targeting those partnerships in all those key areas has been key. So if you want to talk STEM and the things that we have going on, you just pull me aside and we can do that. But once again, as Mayor Cummings said, we have a whole lot of best kept secrets, and we shouldn't be keeping secrets, right? We should be telling our story. So, questions for me, or?
Julie, is there anything in particular, aside from helping tell the story, that you see as an opportunity for us to be part of this, or is it just making us aware of it so that we're
Well, number
We're
one.
making sure we pump it up as well.
Well, right. It's number one is being able to tell the story. So when you're out in the community and they ask, what are you doing to drive economic development? Or, we really need students going into IT careers, or we really need students going into manufacturing. You can say, hey, I can tell you in the Oshkosh Area School District, we are doing these things and we're doing through partnerships. So that's being a key advocate there. But also, as you're talking with people and you hear those what-if conversations, making sure that you connect, you help us connect the dots and help us make those connections for those partnerships. Because when you have something that's working really strongly, it's because you have an internal champion, you have an external champion, and you have really strong partners. And so wherever that organization, wherever that program or whatever you're trying to do is going to land, you need somebody internally that's going to champion it. You need somebody that's externally that's going to help get those red tape things out of the way. And so that's where the city council and the city of Oshkosh, if we run into those things where, there's these, you always seem to have these bureaucratic hoops, right? So if you can help us out with that and help us get in touch with people, we can be external champions for us to help get things out of the way. But also being good partners and helping us find those partners that can help us move things forward so that kids can meet their dreams and that they can be college, career, and community ready, because that's what we need.
And we should note the fact that last week the governor was traveling the state to talk about dual credit and credit options and having the really fine transfer from high school to post-secondary. And we are doing those things already, and we've been doing them for years.
Right.
And so it's not new. and so all the discussion about new initiatives, we're there, we're making progress, and we're being successful in those areas.
And if I can piggyback on that, for example, and it's not just in those specialty areas, next year our seniors, for their senior English option, they can choose to either take dual credit UWO English and speech to have those gen ed credits out of the way, or they can take the Fox Valley Technical College written communications and personal oral, interpersonal communications. And so whichever direction, whether they're looking at 2-year or 4-year, whatever direction they're going in, they're going to be able to have those credits out of the way before they ever walk out of high school. So, and that'll be the first year that they'll have those two opportunities. And that was something that came to our school board for approval back in October. So, very cool.
Thanks, Julie.
Sure.
Thanks, Julie.
Looks like collaboration with Menominee Park Strategic Plan.
That's a city initiative, and we certainly are willing to partner. We'll love to hear more about it.
Ray, you want to just give a little update on what the Parks Board is doing with that?
Sure. We have a number of planning documents that we have gone through over the last 5 to 6 years for the Parks Department. One of those is the Menominee Park Master Plan. It's about a $19 million project plan. It's a 20-year plan is how we're looking at it. We've also have a master plan for Rainbow Park as well as South Park, and then we have our comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, which essentially covers every other park within our community. We have about 44 parks and open spaces. So what we do on the park side is we have our 5-year capital plan. As staff, we will put together a 5-year plan, present it to the city manager and finance director, and then from there it goes to the Common Council, obviously for approval. Before that, to the Parks Board. And the Parks Board will take a look at it. And what we've tried to do is look at least 2 to 3 years out, prioritize the projects, and what we try to do at that point is pull together everything from those various plans, from our core master plans for Menominee Park, South Park, Rainbow Park, try to touch some of the different parks throughout the system. So we're trying to pull together a lot of those opportunities, then goes to the Parks Board for prioritization based on what they see the community needs and wants are from what we've heard from the citizens as well as surveys. And then we forward that to the Common Council for review. It's then put up against all the other city departments for priorities from streets, police, fire, community development. And so we need to beg and plead for any dollars that we can get. And we do that annually. So we have a nice 5-year plan. It touches on some of the Menominee Park things. And I know that board member Eliason does a lot of programming out there, and we've worked with him and the sailing program. Specifically, in the most recent passed as far as the sailboat storage program, the on-land storage, basically we call it. We provided, or the Parks Board approved a 50% rate discount compared to what we charge normally for people to store their boats there. We did that last summer. We worked closely with Steve and his program to make the bathhouse available for equipment storage, restroom use, and so forth. I've been down to the programs. I think they're great programs. I know Steve would like to see a nice year-round shelter down there, and we can give you a price tag for that, Steve. And we're always looking for alternative funding sources as well. So.
I wasn't familiar with that.
But the one thing I did want to touch on is obviously those priorities shift from year to year. Alternative funding sources become available, those that might push projects up. The most recent one that we completed was the inclusive playground at South Park. We had a lot of community support, a lot of support from the Community Foundation, businesses, residents, and that project, it took us about 4 years to get it completed, but it moved up our project list because otherwise we might not have gotten that project done. So we're always looking at opportunities and more than willing to look at ways we can continue to collaborate on your program. So.
Little Oshkosh is another example of community collaboration that's on the horizon.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We are actually working with the Rotary clubs here in Oshkosh. The city has committed in our 2016 capital improvement plan $100,000. Little Oshkosh was built in 1997. It's coming up on 20 years. Typically a playground, we look to replace it between the 15 and 20 years just based on wear and tear, replacement parts, safety changes, or safety standard changes. We've met with the Rotary groups, and they are going to be hosting a barbecue event on Labor Day weekend this year at Menominee Park as a major fundraiser to help us renovate and reconstruct Little Oshkosh. So keep an eye out for that event down the road. It's going to be a great event for 3 days. They bring in national barbecue cookers. So it's going to be a great event, live music. And again, it's one of those things where the community's going to come out and support an event, but also support a major project that needs to be done in our park system. So that's really how we do a lot of our funding. And that's how I know we work closely with Steve on his programs. And like I said, if there's anything, Steve, that that you need to help us with or let us know about, feel free.
Yeah, and if I can take it for just a minute, I want to thank Mark and Ray and the whole staff that we've had a great relationship over the years to get these hundreds or thousands of kids out on the water in a nice shared arrangement with that space. It's been great. If I can make a pitch, and I'll keep it to 48 seconds. The pitch is simply to envision what could be, and I don't have specifics here. It's a little pie in the sky, but I'll pass our posters around for winter programming in the district. We've had a fantastic evolution in getting kids out skating with Dr. Eric Smiltney, with Beta Care, and our skiing, where we have about 7 school sites skiing regularly, weekly, cross-country skiing. We have a downhill program at Garbage Hill. We do some trips out to Nordic Mountain. But the long and short is hundreds and hundreds of kids are getting out in some means of winter sports this year. I have to especially thank Brad and Marie Lasky, who really got us over the hump this year with a nice donation. And I think of other cities like Plymouth or like Green Bay or like Kewanee, and they all have a city ski hill with some manner of lift. I think in a warming hot and kind of a nice turnkey $3 any kid can go skiing scenario. I think that's a great example. A community boating center would be a great example. Whatever it might be, let's imagine this vibrant winter kind of Ottawa place here in our midst where everyone's skating and it's downtown magic of winter and everybody's skiing, and it's really within reach of anybody in Oshkosh. I think it's a doable proposition. So like I say, not a specific agenda, but you'll be getting the specific agenda, let's put it that way. Thank you.
That's cool, Steve. I remember when I was a kid that all through the city, they'd have skating rinks and stuff, usually located at the schools of some, they'd just flood out some area, and they were always very busy, so.
It's right here.
Yeah, Dale Longfellow.
Yeah, we're going to Menominee Park.
Menominee Park. Washington School.
Looks like the next thing we've got here is impact of low-income housing on the Oshkosh Area School District.
And I would like to call upon Dr. David Gunlock, Deputy Superintendent. Dave handles all of the work related to attendance boundaries, redrawing, and capacities of buildings. And one of the things that every once in a while I hear people objecting to growth, and whether it's low-income housing or regular housing, the bottom line is growth is good for the city, growth is good for the school district, and that our desire is to accommodate the children that come to us and never to restrict access nor object. Sometimes individuals get a little bit provincial and say, well, we don't want those children. The reality is that all children who come to live in the community need to be served in the district, and Dave works very hard to accommodate that and to do balancing and to advise the board in advance of what we face to plan for the future. So.
Yeah, probably one of our biggest challenges right now is, which is a good challenge, is that we're starting to see some positive trends in terms of enrollment. We had projected to go down in enrollment far more than we did. We were virtually flat in our enrollment, and what the best news in the north end of town. On the south end, it's about 86%. Most districts consider a school to be full anywhere between 85 and 90% of having all the desks full. So that's a situation that we are continually working with and adjusting. We have a pretty well-developed and increasingly complex out-of-attendance process that allows parents to select which schools they wish to attend to. And what the advantage of that is that allows us to do some pretty positive load balancing amongst our facilities, and we're able to more efficiently staff them as a result of that. So that's good news as well. What would be super helpful to us is if you know of any things that may cause spike in our enrollments in given areas, the greater lead time that we have as an organization, the better we're able to deal with those kind of situations. So if, hey, we're going to be we've just approved these units, we think they're going to produce X number of families, and of those, this many may have kids, then we can take it from there and say, okay, well, then we need to project out, and we need to start planning in advance, and then we come before the board and say, here's our plans moving ahead. One of the advantages we've had now is, as we're moving into our second year of our Learning Without Limits initiative, we're finding that on our plans, we're looking at dismantling some of our computer labs at the elementary level. Because the students will have their own devices, so we can start reclaiming some of those spaces. That will be a nice pressure valve for some of us. Some of our schools have already taken advantage of that. eCook just recently dismantled their computer lab and put the computers out into carts into the classrooms, so they're still using them, but it gave them some needed space relief. So we have some options as far as space, but it really helps us if we have a little bit of an idea of here's some new students that may be coming into Oshkosh, because that's a very positive development, and we want to be ready.
One of the things that, as we plan for the future, we look always at the balancing issue, but also trying to, and as Dave described, their whole open enrollment, internal open enrollment process, we've been very successful in being able to accommodate. I think you have over 500 students who are not going to the attendance area that the geography where they live would be, and in virtually all of those cases, because their parent request, parents are providing their own transportation for that location, because that's how important, because many times it's close to where grandparents might be, or where childcare might be, or some other reason, maybe close to where they work. And so we try to accommodate, and frankly, that increases our customer satisfaction greatly by having that internal transfer process available and not restricting individuals that the luck of geography determines where they have to go to school.
A lot of times it's people who may have moved within our community, and they just, maybe they have a student who's in third grade and they'd like to finish out at that elementary school, and that gives us the opportunity to approve that and let them continue on. It's good for them, it's good for us. And we only do it when we have space, so it helps, and it's a win-win for everybody.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you, David. High school busing looks like the next thing on the agenda.
And I'm calling upon Sue Schnorr to respond to that issue. She's been working with the group and discussing access to more full-scale busing. There's a social religious organization that Sue has met with frequently that's in the community, trying to look at wanting to be sure that all children can ride to school. Well, we have a counteracting group in the school district that talks about the walking school bus or greater fitness by saying it's a good thing to walk to school. And there are two very different perceptions that I'm sure you as members of the Common Council hear as well, because it's two very different philosophies of life. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sue.
In a typical school district, we're required to provide transportation for anyone over 2 miles. But because we're a city that has mass transit, we do not have to follow that rule within the city limits. So a child could be more than 2 miles from school and not get transportation. And this group approached me with wanting the district to provide transportation for all students. And so we've kind of narrowed it down to just those students more than 2 miles and possibly just those students eligible for free and reduced meals. So we've had a number of discussions. It's been we haven't had a discussion recently, but I've had a few discussions with Jim about what the cost of that might be based on what children currently utilize transportation, and we're looking at a price tag of around $50,000. That was all transportation, but I'm guessing it affects the high school the most because of our middle schools and our elementary schools are pretty neighborhood schools. There's not a lot of children more than 2 miles from those schools. So we haven't really made a lot of progress there, but I talked to this group about possibly piloting a program because we really need some goals and objectives. What do they want to accomplish? And then maybe pilot a program for a year or two and see if we actually accomplish those goals. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
And one of the issues that we face is that it is somewhat an economic issue. The middle and upper class families, the greatest amount of parking in our high school parking lots is or the least amount is on the first day of school. And as students mature with passing driver's tests at age 16, the change occurs over the year, and that transportation occurs because they suddenly have convinced their parents that an automobile is necessary, and in many cases because of students working, they use that vehicle to go to work right after school as well. But that is an ongoing issue, and as our friends with in the police department clearly recognize at the elementary and middle school level, traffic congestion. Students don't walk to school. All of our school sites are tremendous traffic hazard patterns immediately before school or after school every day. If I'm out, as I am frequently out visiting schools, I make a point of either getting away from the school before dismissal or knowing I'm going to stay for 20 minutes afterwards, because those are tremendous issues with transportation, and that's an ongoing issue. And Jim and planning staff have been working with us on probably our most painful traffic hazard after school is the potential of a traffic circle on 20th by Traeger, because that is a nightmare. And the Common Council, your predecessors, I don't think any of you were on the council at the time, but at the original plan had a north exit out of the Traeger complex, elementary and middle, and the citizens in that neighborhood objected, and the Common Council voted to not create a second exit out of Traeger, which then has been a nightmare for the last 20 years. And so it's something we're continuing to have to deal with, because if you look carefully, I believe even fire hydrants and other utilities are in on this stretch of driveway that doesn't exist because the neighborhood objected to it. So we've been working hard with Jim and planners on looking at what could we do to alleviate that, and a traffic circle might be just the right work on school district property.
Would there be any chance for grants with this program?
We've explored that. We haven't done anything so far, but I can give you an update. I've looked into a couple opportunities. It hasn't come to fruition yet.
Yeah, we've been very appreciative of the work of your staff, as well as county representative in working through this process. And Jim Fox, our facilities director, has been providing wonderful leadership in working with city staff on this issue. So,
Generally, most of the grants are surrounding around people walking to school.
Yeah, I know.
And the problem we have is that they're not walking to school. And
No, it's
it's
still public
amazing the
transportation.
2-block drive that
right.
kids get to school. And
I liked Stan's pitch. I think you should consider sales, because that was a nice pitch right there.
Yes, well, I know where to place the blame.
We heard about walking last, we heard about walking last
I
night.
inherited a folder that was about this thick, and since that time, it's about, it's a ream of paper thick on the whole issue of, and I did share the story at our last meeting a couple weeks ago, that this year was the least number of calls, being 0 of complaints, because in the month of December, when we have all the big-time concerts, there was no snow. And when you compound snow in that parking lot and exits and all those things, I would get, and I know that some members of our board have also received calls about the terrible exit there and waiting in line. And especially grandparents are very impatient when they come to a concert and they need to leave, and they wonder why we designed such a terrible access to that or egress from that school. So
I was one of the people who sat in on the design team meetings for what is now Carl Traeger School, and the anticipation was that more children would walk to school or would take their bicycles, and that never happened. And so that was one of the reasons why the entrance exit was designed as it was, because they expected children to be riding bicycles or to be walking, and they didn't expect that armada of SUVs just go up multiple times a day.
The main issue with the grants we're having is it's a driveway access point. If it was an intersection and I had a safety problem or something, I might be able to leverage something, but that's the main reason why we're not having any luck with grants. But, you know, I think we've got a pretty good team with the school district, the city, and the county trying to work together to see what a possible solution would be. And like Sue said, we're willing to work with her as far as the city transit system to see, you know, what we can do for a partnership. So, you know, we continue to discuss that. The main issue with the busing is, you know, the city bus is funded by the city, so, and we have some regulations where we can only operate within the city limits. So there's some students that live in towns that are part of the school district, and that's mainly where the issue is, but that's something we're willing to work together on. It's just, you know, it always comes down to the demand and then the financing of it, so. We're willing to work on it.
I'm curious, Sue, you were talking about low income as well as busing, and I think you've been tracking this for a while in terms of numbers. Do you have any information as to whether or not the population has spiked a little bit because of our refugee settlement? Because I know there may be some funding opportunities, you know, in that sort of context, or don't you know?
Julie can.
Actually, for our students and families with refugee background, for the past, actually 3 years in a row, we have been receiving grant funding, federal, that has been funneled through the state, and it's called the Student Refugee Impact Grant. And in that grant, we have written in for transportation, because transportation for our families and students with refugee background is a big barrier, because they may not have a driver's license. How are you going to do all these things? And so transportation is a huge barrier. So money for GO transit passes has been written into the grant, as well as other transportation services to make sure that our families and our students access that. So we're already leveraging grant funding for that, and we will continue to do that, because that is one of the #1 barriers for them to access school activities, and also for our families to access work activities and education at Fox Valley Technical College. So
That's great. I'm glad you're taking advantage of
Julie, you
that.
may want to share the number of students under refugees that we're serving right now.
Well, we're actually getting another family that's coming to the school district. So currently we're at 87 students identified with refugee background that we're currently serving. It's larger than that, because after students and families will settle here, they may resettle someplace else depending on family ties. So it's been well over 100 that have come through the Oshkosh Area School District doors. But currently, right now, we have 87 students that are identified as students with refugee background.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question real quick? Last year when we talked about transportation, Jim, you were saying that Appleton had a program and that we were going to maybe look into that. Did you ever have a chance to chase that down?
Yeah, well, what Appleton does is they have a couple tripper routes, which are the school district funds. So they say, okay, well, we want a bus to go to this particular school and follow this route at this time of the day. So they have a couple of those that they do for specific school. The school district gives Valley Transit money to do that. So they basically fully fund that route. So that's what they do that. And then they have a program too where they contribute financially to Valley Transit to allow some of the students to get basically, it's similar to what we do with Fox Valley Tech and University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. They give us so much money and then their students can ride for free. So I know the initial question was how we could help with cost reduction. Well, we really don't have a good way to do that. We can help you with the demand, but we don't have the funding available to offer it for free. There's a cost involved with it, and that's where Sue and I have been talking, and that's where some of these other groups had asked. They had some interest, so there's some possibility for that need. There might be some funding there.
And that's the $50,000 number.
Right.
Okay.
That's at least the current, that's the number of bus passes we buy now. So we would assume that it would cost even more than that.
Got it.
Or actually, no, that's the revenue that you get from K-12 now, minus the bus passes we already provide. That is the 50,000 number. So he estimated how many students ride currently, minus how many bus passes we already provide, and that's the 50,000 number. The part that we don't know is if we all of a sudden made free transportation for every student, the ridership would go up, and then.
Yeah, and that's basically what we've experienced with Fox Valley Tech. We started this program a little over a year ago, and we already had to renegotiate because the ridership went way up. So that's the dilemma. It's a good problem.
Old adage: if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, indeed. If it's free.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Looks like the next thing we have is crossing guard recognition.
Well, we are real privileged, and that's one of the great mysteries. In fact, those who have been in leadership Oshkosh have discovered that that's one of the misidentified agencies. We are blessed with the fact that the City of Oshkosh, through the police department, provides the crossing guards. Everybody thinks they belong to the school district, just like they think the recreation department belongs to the city. So it's one of those crossovers that are there, and we're certainly very pleased with the services we have. Chief's predecessor had some difficulty a couple years ago where he had a wave of retirements and recruiting individuals. We've had a little more stability with this, but we are grateful, and each individual school generally plans a recognition to honor because they build a relationship with the crossing guards at their locations, and we certainly support their efforts in doing so, and if there's other pieces that we should be aware of. But we are truly grateful for those services rendered on very cold mornings and very cold afternoons, especially that those folks are out on the street. And Chief may have some additional thoughts related to that issue.
Well, thank you for having me here. Obviously, I'm the new guy in town, new guy in the room. I was quite surprised to find out that by statute I had the crossing guards. I will share with you that there was the department did a recognition of our crossing guards. National Crossing Guard Recognition Week occurred just recently. We are challenged at times with recruiting of crossing guards. It's a thankless job, but I think they do it primarily for the love of the children, for the opportunity to serve the community. And when you drive by one when it's snowing and you're bundled up in your coat, just think closely about the fact that that person's standing out there waiting for a child to come walking by, and they're taking care of our children. So we value our crossing guards immensely, and we appreciate everything that the schools do to recognize them. Crossing guards to me are almost like a volunteer, and you have to really encourage them to continue what they're doing. Otherwise, you might lose them, and it is difficult to recruit somebody to stand out there in the snow and the rain and the sleet and make sure everybody's children get where they need to be at. So we're working hard with that, too.
Sure. And we will continue to cooperate, and we're always pleased. And one of the things that I try to do is, in wandering around the school district to schools, is to have strike-up conversations with those crossing guards and have learn more about them and encourage them as well.
Looks like the next thing is diversity coordinator.
I believe Mark has been approached, and I know I have, and I believe the county and university and a discussion about potentially multiple agencies, at very least 3, county, city, and school district, to potentially look at employing a diversity coordinator to both deal with educating our staff, but also certainly would be helpful in the school district for assisting us in further training. I would assume so with city training of diversity issues. Mark, you may have.
Yeah, I think the council actually gave me this as a goal for 2016 to work on this issue. They didn't want to necessarily limit it to simply the city. They wanted to talk about what we could do as a community, and I think some of the initiatives that are going on with the community book reader are indicative of that. There's actually a crossover into economic development as well. We've had enough discussions with some of the larger companies. Oshkosh Corp is a real obvious one, but it's important for them to be able to demonstrate that this is a very welcoming, inclusive community, because they don't do a very effective job at recruiting if they bring somebody in with a diverse background and then they turn around after 1 year. So they recognize the value of this, and that's where I think it's us training ourselves on things we can do to be more receptive and understanding of what other cultures may have, what we need to do to be better about it. Also basic things like recruiting. If we have a diverse population in our schools, what do we do to encourage teachers and staff with that? Similarly, we have the same challenge in our primarily public safety, but it's not exclusive to public safety. We have a challenge just on a recruitment basis. And it's not just a city thing, and it's not just a school thing. It's more of a community thing. I think the university has taken some steps in that regard, but we need to have a discussion about how we can work collectively on it, because one of us doing it won't be enough, and in fact it may not help if only one of us is doing it. So we're going to be having discussions. I'm looking into some scenarios about how other communities have done it, but it's something that council has recognized as a need, and I think we're all coming, as we become more of a global type of community, it's almost imperative that we take this on.
I think it's as imperative as our cooperation we've done on our joint health medical clinic. I mean, that's the same kind of partnership that I hope we could come to board and council and county potentially on as a cooperative effort to deal in that area. Just to give you a sense, right now we're just under about between 18 and 19% minority population in the school district. From my experience, that I'm used to 50% to 60%. That's a very low number, but for Oshkosh, that's a big deal. And growing in that area is something that we need to attend to.
The chief and I met with a group at the university after the Martin Luther King event. It was a chancellor and 4 or 5 people, and we it was just kind of a very general conversation. You explained your experience in Virginia and so forth, and
Sure.
So we're aware of it, and I think the biggest thing I left with them is they've got to really understand this community, the culture, the history of this community, before they try to go forward with something that we have to do. But they've got to realize that that's a very real obstacle to mindset. And I can see some of the townies shaking their heads. So, but I think we made a pretty good point, Chief, when we explained that.
And I would suggest, just like all these others, that Mark and I will work with designating partners for us to work together on this issue as well. And lastly, we've given the chief all of 2 minutes to talk about the issue of department with body cams, and I'll just turn it over to the chief.
One of the important components as it relates to body camera programs for law enforcement agencies is that we're collaborative with everybody that it touches. Everybody has their own concerns, everybody has their own needs, and part of implementing a program is developing a good policy. And that policy is in the beginning stages of being developed, but as a police department, we're going to be reaching out to the schools to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the schools. All of our officers who are patrol officers and our SROs and our tactical officers, they're going to be having cameras on them. So we want to make sure that we're partnering with the schools to ensure that the things that are important to you, we're capturing those within our policies. I've had experience with developing these in my previous agency, and it worked very well when we brought all the parties together who had a play in this thing, so we could hear them out and we can make sure we vet out the important factors that we just don't recognize because of what we do, but as educators, you will have a better take as to what your concerns might be. Is that quick enough?
We'll appreciate that. I'll turn it back to the two Steves at the head of the table that we're subject to your direction on planning future joint meetings and plans to report. And Mark and I spend a lot of time at meetings together, so we know how to do that.
Requests for future agenda items, anything? I guess I'd like to ask Allison if she would be willing to get together with our mayor.
Absolutely.
And try to see if we can, like Stan was suggesting there, come up with like maybe every 6 months, just touch base on some of these things that are mutual.
Good idea. Yes, sir.
Would that be okay, Stephen?
Be fine.
Excellent.
Good deal. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody who came this evening. At this time, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved. Second.
Can I call the roll, please? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
For attending our meeting.